14th, 2002.
In my gut, I just had a feeling that I was looking at pure evil.
He is a soldier.
I can't imagine a greater privilege than serving my country. Wheat stem rust.
Are you nervous?
No.
He's largely unknown.
You have never heard of him, but he is protecting you from your worst nightmare.
There were 4-story high fermentation tanks for the production of anthrax. We're talking about killing everybody on the planet several times.
Great.
His weapon is his heart.
People like him almost immediately.
I like people who have the courage to say the truth. He's very brave man.
Andy is one of a kind.
Tonight, Germ Warrior, one man's battle against pure evil. From ABC News, this is Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from Washington, Chris Bury. Just a generation ago, President Reagan called it the evil empire. Now another Republican president is embracing Moscow in ways few could have imagined back then. At next week's summit, Presidents Bush and Putin will sign one deal dramatically reducing nuclear arsenals, and they'll sign another spelling out priorities of what both are calling a new partnership. At the top of that list is stopping the spread of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. Even now, much less is known about the old Soviet biological program than its nuclear arsenal. For at least 2 decades, the Soviets secretly produced tons of anthrax, Ebola, and even the plague, a massive and deadly arsenal that American spy satellites failed to detect. In fact, a good bit of what we do know is thanks to the man you will meet here tonight. His singular mission to search out and destroy biological stockpiles in the former Soviet Union. In the shadowy world of biowarfare, he is among the nation's least known and most important soldiers. And as we hear from ABC's Robert Krulwich, this warrior has his own arsenal of unconventional weapons.
The man on the left works for the Pentagon. The woman in the high hat, a lab technician at one of the most secret, most dangerous facilities ever built in the former Soviet Union. It is Andy Weber's job to find these laboratories, and especially to find what's in these refrigerators.
Can you take out one box? She needs to get gloves.
The 4 boxes in this refrigerator are kept frozen for protection at 40 degrees below 0 centigrade.
It's sort of minus.
So the lab technician now has her gloves on so we can take a box out and look inside.
Oh boy. What are they? Different exotic animal viruses.
Maybe they don't know what's in each one.
Well, we'll see what's in this box. There's an additional seal on each box.
These boxes contain weapons of mass destruction arranged in small glass breakable vials. Okay, as you can see, there are 10 little packages here made of paper. Each one's a box.
This is a sheep pox.
These vials contain highly contagious germs created by Soviet scientists, and the grains inside, down there between her thumb and forefinger, are designed to infect and destroy all sheep in America. And in the other vials, there is cowpox, horsepox, goatpox, swine fever. The Soviets had carefully targeted all livestock, all the meat in America.
Well, continue on.
And next door, in another room, there is another refrigerator with another box that Andy's team discovered, unprotected, away from the laboratory. And in this box, there are germs specifically targeted at American grains.
Wheat stem rust.
Germs genetically designed by the Soviets to destroy our wheat and our potatoes.
What could somebody do with that?
Yellow stem rust is very endemic, especially in the northern area.
Covertly introduced into a wheat field.
Andy is a hunter. He once found a stash of bubonic plague in a can of peas. His is an odd talent. Over and over, he's gotten the very Soviet scientists who designed these weapons to confess to him, to show him their secrets. And he does this not by coercion or bribery. He does it, it seems, with affection.
праздниками.
Andy has a way of connecting with them in a way that I've never seen replicated.
New York Times reporter Judith Miller has traveled to Kazakhstan with Andy. She's watched him work, and she agrees he's not just a friendly guy. His friendships are strategic, tactical. He is an American soldier who targets people with his heart.
Yes, it is very nice.
Thank you.
Why,
Says another friend, the Deputy Prime Minister of Kazakhstan.
He's very brave man. Maybe he is the best soldier.
It was Andy's team, after all, that was first. The first Americans into so many secret Soviet facilities. The first to see doomsday weapons in boxes sealed and then secured, look at this, by twine. One snip of scissors and you're in. And now Andy is asking former Soviets who built these laboratories, who know how they work, to tear them down. Andy is not a famous man.
He's largely unknown.
And he prefers it that way, he says. But we pushed, and so with help from producer Kirk Wolfinger and the PBS program Nova, who provided much of this footage, we're going to show you how Andy Weber works.
Thank you very much.
Back in the 1960s and 70s, the Soviet Union built a number of secret cities in the middle of nowhere. One of them, in Kazakhstan, was called Stepnogorsk.
How far is this place from any place I've heard of?
Far. It's about as far in the middle of nowhere as you can get.
And hidden somewhere in this city was a factory for biological weapons. The Kazakhis didn't know exactly what went on there. But when Kazakhstan became a new country, the new president, that's him voting with his wife, asked the United States for help. The Kazakhis wanted America to send in a team of experts to find out how dangerous is this factory. Andy Weber, 34 years old, got the assignment. He was told, assemble a team, fly to Stepnogorsk, the government will take care of everything. Well, something went wrong.
We had a chartered aircraft.
From Kazakhstan Airlines, they arrived at Stepnogorsk. A delegation was waiting.
They came to our plane and said, "You're not welcome in our city, please leave."
Before you got out of the plane?
Yes.
We were told to go home.
Jeff Weiss was on the trip with Andy.
So did you get back in the plane and go home? Not really.
I refused. We were there to accomplish a mission that had been authorized by the head of state.
Problem was, the president of Kazakhstan had not informed this man, the plant manager, Colonel Gennady Lepyoshkin, that Americans were coming.
And what impression did he make? Can you describe him?
He's a fire plug of a man, very strong, and he has piercing eyes and a handshake that can make you wince.
They're very stony-faced. They don't blink.
There was a standoff, but the next day, a fax did come from the capital, did authorize the visit, and Colonel Lepyoshkin had no choice but to let them in. And once they entered, the Americans told Lepyoshkin, okay, we know this plant has been used to make certain germs. The Americans suspected the place made anthrax. But what they didn't know, could not have known, was how much anthrax.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Sprint PCS.
First of all, look at the size of this hole. It is 4 stories high.
1, 2,
This is Ludmila.
3, 4,
She helped guide Andy's group to the secret facility at Stepnogorsk.
6.
When this factory was in full operation, each one of these holes that she's pointing out contained a giant fermenting tank.
9,
And what exactly were they fermenting? Well, the plant's manager, Colonel Lepyoshkin, said
10,
vaccines.
oh,
11.
This was, he said, a very large medical facility with, now this was strange, bunkers.
These bunkers were built to withstand a nuclear blast. They're reinforced concrete, in some places several meters thick.
To protect vaccines?
I don't think so.
The Americans were more than skeptical.
They're not making vaccines here.
What does the expression, hanging noodles on your ears, mean?
Well, it's similar to the expression pulling your leg or lying to you.
For 2 days, Andy Weber and his team were taken all over the factory at Stepnogorsk, and for that whole time, says New York Times reporter Judith Miller, they got noodled.
They have been stonewalled repeatedly. They've been lied to. They've been misled. The Russians seem to be having a very good time doing it.
But reviewing the raw tapes of that visit, the Americans never got angry, never scolded. Quite the contrary, they tried to have fun. For example, they came across a tank labeled spirits in Russian, so they said, well, what's in this thing? And the next thing you know, one of the Russians has dipped a glass into the tank. Sorry about this tape. Stop. You see this glass? The Russians say it's drinkable.
98% off. Pharmaceutical grade.
Someone asked Andy, you want a sample?
No, thanks.
Our approach was not to rub their noses in it, to call them liars.
So you just choose not to frown. You choose to smile whenever possible. It's that kind of a tilt.
It helps, yeah. It's a good way to break the tension.
But remember, while they were smiling, they were seeing for the first time that these same Russians had built a huge factory to make germs aimed at America. Remember the letter sent to Senator Daschle's office last year that caused so much pain? It contained less than 2 grams of anthrax. The fermenters at Stepnogorsk, in 1 year, Andy calculated, could make what?
300 tons of anthrax agent.
300 tons? Did you say tons?
Tons.
That's the Daschle letter 150 million times. Andy believed he just discovered an anthrax factory of unimaginable scale.
In my gut, I just had a feeling that I was looking at pure evil.
But to be absolutely sure, he had to get these Russians to admit, to confess. He had to win their trust.
He has a way of... People are very comfortable around him. People like him almost immediately.
So, Andy consciously focused on the man in charge, Colonel Lepyoshkin, applying a kind of strategic affection.
In some ways, that's part of my job.
So if Gennady Lepyoshkin had been a janitor at Stepnogorsk, you probably wouldn't have made the effort.
Probably not.
But for 2 days, Andy made the effort, and when the factory tour finally ended, Colonel Lepyoshkin stood up at the farewell meal, put his hand on Andy's shoulder, and out of nowhere...
He said yes, that the plant was for biological weapons production.
Just like that?
Yeah. And this was the first time we had heard that type of openness.
Yeah, it was a great surprise. I'm sure mouths opened.
Sure, it's shocking. The whole Soviet enterprise was built on lies and deception and stonewalling. And to have the men who made some of the most hideous weapons the world has ever seen just kind of break down and decide to share these still classified secrets in Russia with a group of the enemy, that is Andy Weber and his team, is a stunning thing. I can't remember that anything like this had ever happened before.
But that's not all. Eventually, Colonel Lepyoshkin admitted that his plant had also tested Ebola virus and plague. All in all, he told reporter Judith Miller,
we made enough weapons to be able to kill everybody in the world 9 or 10 times over. Nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, that's the way we did it.
When he confesses to you, is he taking a risk, a considerable risk for himself?
Yes.
We're going to go into our wheel.
One day after his confession, without permission from local authorities, Colonel Lepyoshkin jumped into a helicopter with Andy.
It works. It works, Gennady.
And together, they flew off to a remote island, to an abandoned base, where Lepyoshkin showed the Americans where the Soviets had secretly buried tons of anthrax. Why did Lepyoshkin do this?
He's a gutsy guy.
Yeah, but why did he confess to Andy? Tell secrets to Andy? Go places with Andy? Because, says Judith Miller, Andy gives people room to confess.
If given an opportunity in an unthreatening environment to do so, and to be so.
And that's the key thing, unthreatening.
Unthreatening and unjudgmental.
I like people who have the courage to say the truth.
And so from strategic friends, they became true friends, with, of course, the drinking. In this part of the world, there's always drinking. The colonel is pretending here to be a cosmonaut. And then there's hunting. Andy loves to hunt. He is, says his friend,
Fanatic.
a fanatic.
Fanatic.
So he hunted with Lepyoshkin, and Lepyoshkin introduced him to other friends.
And this was the best way to build rapport with military and security officials.
And in his home up in the mountains, Andy had a sauna, or what Russians call a banya.
So if you eat dried fish and beer and hit each other with birch sticks and stay in the water with the steam,
Then you're pals.
Within months, Gennady Lepyoshkin had arranged with Andy to supervise the careful destruction of his own plant, so they could never make weapons here again. Says one of his admirers, Senator Richard Lugar of Indiana.
Andy is one of a kind in terms of the chemical biological situation.
Andy's group, the Office of Cooperative Threat Reduction Policy in the Pentagon, has found biological weapons and secret factories in Russia, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. When the Pentagon was attacked on September 11th, Andy was inside. And he says he got hundreds of emails from scientists all over Central Asia asking, "You okay, Andy?" Because Andy now has a network that still needs constant maintenance. Last summer, for example, Gennady Lepyoshkin was fired. Russians aren't that popular these days in Kazakhstan. So that night, Andy, at Gennady's house, asked the unspoken question.
What would it mean if Lepyoshkin went to work for Iran, Iraq? I said, oh my God.
Iran and Iraq are looking for recruits, and with Lepyoshkin out of a job, Andy has to do something. But what exactly? Last May, Colonel Gennady Lepyoshkin, who ran the secret anthrax plant at Stepnogorsk, was fired. So that night, he and his dog, Chase, sang a kind of Slavic version of the blues. It is so hard. They fired us from work. They're not feeding us. This is a lament?
A lament. You have to suffer to sing the blues, and he's singing the blues.
with Chase.
His dog is actually singing the blues.
Gennady Lepyoshkin knows more about making deadly germs. He has more academic degrees and medals than almost anybody. The Iranians will almost certainly find Gennady, so protectively, a few months after his dismissal, Andy hired him.
Yeah, he's working for us now on contract.
This is how it goes.
We're winning this battle one scientist at a time.
1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you.
But some of the people who have access to information and to deadly germs are not scientists. Colonel Lepyoshkin had a translator, Ludmila, the redhead sitting on the ground by his knees.
Yeah.
Ludmila, who'd gotten good pay and enjoys nice clothes and shoes. Since Stepnogorsk closed, she has struggled.
As for me, for my opinion, it's very sad that this situation like this now, because we lost our job. We don't know how to survive in such conditions.
Ludmila, as a translator, also had access to secret information. So if someone from Iran or elsewhere were to offer her money now and ask her for help, we know she could use the cash, but would she trade secrets for money? Would she help somebody else make a biological weapon? Colonel Lepyoshkin seems to worry about what he did. But what about translators like Ludmila? Producer Kirk Wolfinger asked.
And how did they feel when it was all done?
I don't know.
Nobody had regrets about it?
No.
Must be sad, though, to see all this.
Yeah.
But would she ever do it again?
I only think that it was a hard job for our people, but life is life. It was only our job.
There are a handful of scientists like Lepyoshkin, but there are thousands of Ludmilas. This is Robert Krulwich for Nightline in Washington.
I'll be back in a moment.
To receive a daily email announcement about each evening's Nightline and a preview of special broadcasts, log on to the Nightline page at abcnews.com.
And that's our report for tonight. I'm Chris Bury in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.